In the summer of 1943, at Tachikawa Airfield in Japan, Lieutenant Fubashi eagerly pushed the throttle of the second Ki-84 prototype forward. He watched the airspeed indicator climb rapidly past 387 mepi, a speed unmatched by any Japanese fighter to date. Below, a team of engineers meticulously timed the Hayate's ascent, which reached an impressive 2,780 feet per minute, nearly rivaling the famed P-51 Mustang. For the first time since the attack on Pearl Harbor, there was a palpable sense of optimism in Japan, a belief that they had finally engineered an aircraft capable of surpassing America's finest. The Ki-84 boasted formidable specifications: two 12-7mm machine guns, two 20mm cannons, and a robust 65mm of armor glass, all powered by a Nakajima Hei-45 Homar engine, producing 2,000 horsepower. The initial test reports were filled with enthusiastic praise, describing the prototypes as virtually flawless. As a result, the military placed substantial production orders, anticipating the manufacture of thousands of units. However, 18 months later, squadron leader Kobayashi submitted a strikingly different report. Aircraft 1446 was lost during its landing approach due to a gear collapse with no enemy contact. Subsequently, another aircraft experienced engine failure at 15,000 feet, and yet another suffered brake failure during takeoff. By 1945, the same aircraft design that had performed flawlessly in testing could barely reach 250 mph in combat. Japan had indeed created a plane capable of challenging the P-51 Mustang, but tragically, they lacked the manufacturing capabilities to produce it effectively when it was most needed. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. On that bright July morning in 1943, Lieutenant Fubashi settled into the cockpit of the second Ki-84 prototype, the Nakajima Ha-45 Homari engine, rumbling powerfully beneath him. Through the thick 65mm armor glass canopy, he spotted Chief Engineer Koyama standing beside the runway at Tachikawa Airfield, a stopwatch glinting in his hand like a precious charm. The engineer's face, etched with the marks of countless hours of dedication, reflected the immense pressure he felt. For 18 months, he had devoted himself to this moment, working 16-hour days to prove that Japan could develop a fighter aircraft capable of competing with America's highly regarded P-51 Mustang. Fubashi's gloved fingers delicately traced the throttle quadrant, treating it with the respect one might reserve for a perfectly crafted samurai sword. The Homar's 18 cylinders unleashed 2,000 horsepower at takeoff, an unprecedented level of raw power for a Japanese fighter. As he gradually advanced the throttle, the aircraft strained against its wheel brakes, like a caged beast yearning for freedom. The sound was intoxicating, a deep, mechanical growl that promised both intense power and exhilarating speed. The prototype soared into the sky with astonishing force, its climb rate immediately surpassing all expectations. Fubashi watched as the altimeter rapidly unwound, the Hayate, Hurricane, living up to its name as it clawed skyward at an impressive 2,780 feet per minute. Below, Koyama's engineering team scattered across the tarmac, some shouting observations to stenographers, while others simply gazed upward in awe. This was the climb rate that could rival the Mustang. This was the performance that could potentially reshape the war. Upon reaching 15,000 feet, Fubashi leveled off and commenced his speed runs. The airspeed indicator steadily climbed past 350 mph, then 360, and finally 370. His heart pounded in his chest as the needle approached 380. At 387 mph, he cautiously reduced the throttle and activated his radio. Tachikawa control. Maximum level airspeed achieved. 387, repeat, 387 mph. The words themselves seemed to carry the weight of victory as they echoed through the radio waves. In the engineering hangar, Koyama heard those numbers and felt 2 decades of professional frustration melt away into pure joy. 300. The American P-51D model could reach 437 mph under ideal conditions, but the 50-meter difference seemed manageable, particularly when considering the Ki-84's superior armament, while the Mustang carried 6. 50-caliber machine guns, the Hayat was equipped with 2 12 7mm machine guns paired with 2 devastating 20mm cannons. These cannons would prove invaluable against the formidable B-29 bombers. Koyama had meticulously designed the Ki-84 to address every vulnerability that had plagued Japanese fighters since the start of the war. The legendary Zero had initially dominated the Pacific skies with its speed and maneuverability, but American pilots had learned to exploit its critical weakness, the lack of pilot protection. The Ki-84 featured 13 mm of head and back armor, multiple fuselage bulkheads, and a thick armor glass canopy, ensuring that Japanese pilots would no longer be vulnerable to single, lucky shots. As Fubashi initiated his landing approach, the prototype's advanced features manifested themselves in subtle yet significant ways. The direct fuel injection system provided smooth, consistent power throughout the entire flight envelope. The hydraulic systems responded with remarkable precision. Even the landing gear, a complex assembly that had caused issues in earlier prototypes, extended and retracted flawlessly. When the main wheels made contact with Tachikawa's runway, Fubashi felt the reassuring grip of effective wheel brakes, a crucial detail that distinguished professional aircraft from mere experimental curiosities. The ground crew swarmed the prototype as Fubashi shut down the engine. Mechanics immediately began inspecting engine temperatures, oil pressure readings, and fuel consumption figures. Their preliminary assessments were exceptionally positive. The He-45 had maintained a cool operating temperature throughout the test flight, consuming fuel at a rate that suggested an impressive operational range. More importantly, a post-flight inspection revealed no mechanical anomalies, no stress fractures, and no signs of impending failure. In the debriefing room, Fubashi faced a semicircle of engineers, military officials, and production managers, all eagerly awaiting his every word. His report was methodical, clinical, and carried profound implications for American air superiority. Control response, immediate and precise, across the entire speed range. Engine performance, consistent power delivery from sea level to 20,000 feet. Weapon system, all 4 guns fired flawlessly during test bursts. Conclusion, this aircraft meets or exceeds all performance specifications. Factory manager Yamamoto, representing Nakajima's production division, examined the test data with barely disguised excitement. The Imperial Japanese Army Air Force had already placed preliminary orders for over 3,000 Ki-84 fighters, and these exceptional test results would undoubtedly lead to additional contracts. His calculators were already whirring, determining production schedules, material requirements, and delivery timelines. The war had created an insatiable demand for high-performance fighters, and Japan finally had a design worthy of meeting that demand. Even amidst this triumph of engineering, faint signals of potential issues began to emerge. Despite its impressive power, the He-45 engine operated at higher temperatures compared to previous Japanese radial engines. Ground personnel observed that engine temperatures remained elevated for extended periods after flights, suggesting potential limitations in the cooling system that could pose challenges in tropical combat environments. Furthermore, the intricate direct injection system, while enhancing performance, demanded more meticulous maintenance compared to the simpler carburetors used in most Japanese aircraft. The landing gear assembly raised the most significant concerns. Although it performed flawlessly during testing, its mechanism was notably heavier and more complex than earlier designs. The hydraulic actuators, precisely machined struts, and integrated brake systems presented manufacturing challenges that would strain Japan's industrial capabilities as production increased. Koyama's perfectionist engineering had produced a masterpiece, but such masterpieces required highly skilled craftsmen to construct them effectively. As the summer of 1943 transitioned into autumn, the Ki-84 program accelerated toward full-scale production. Test pilots across Japan reported consistent results, confirming that the Hayate consistently outperformed existing Japanese fighters while approaching the capabilities of the P-51 Mustang. Intelligence reports from the Pacific indicated that American pilots, who had grown confident due to months of aerial superiority, were ill-prepared for a Japanese fighter capable of matching their speed and exceeding their firepower. The promise appeared absolute. Japan had seemingly developed an aircraft capable of defeating the P-51 Mustang, as demonstrated by the prototypes and confirmed by test data and production orders. However, these promises made within engineering laboratories were soon to confront the harsh realities of wartime manufacturing. The true test of the Hayate would not occur in the controlled environment of Tachikawa Airfield, but in the chaotic conditions of mass production under an increasingly desperate empire. Squadron leader Kobayashi adjusted his parachute straps as he approached his Ki-84 on the dusty airfield outside Hankou, China, amidst the sweltering heat of August 1944. The 22nd Sentai had recently received their first operational Hayates 2 weeks prior, and today would mark their combat debut against American Army Air Force fighters that had become dangerously confident over Chinese skies. The morning briefing buzzed with anticipation, as Japanese pilots were finally equipped with aircraft capable of matching the enemy's esteemed Mustangs and Thunderbolts. The initial combat sorties surpassed all expectations. American pilots, accustomed to easily outmaneuvering Japanese interceptors, found themselves facing fighters that could not only match their speed, but also deliver devastating cannon fire from unexpected angles. Lieutenant Sasaki's after-action report vividly captured the Americans' shock. Enemy formations scattered immediately upon visual contact. 2 P-51s attempted high-speed dive escapes, but were unsuccessful and subsequently destroyed by 20mm cannon fire at an indicated airspeed of 400 mph. For 3 weeks, the Ki-84s of the 22nd Sentai instilled terror among American formations over central China. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. American bomber crews, who had grown accustomed to Japanese fighters falling behind during their escape runs, now faced interceptors capable of pursuing them at maximum speed while delivering accurate fire. The tactical advantage that had favored American aviation since 1943 seemed to vanish overnight. But Kobayashi began to notice troubling patterns emerging from these otherwise successful missions. Aircraft 1446 returned from a routine patrol with hydraulic fluid leaking from its landing gear bays. The pilot reported normal flight characteristics, but a post-flight inspection revealed stress fractures in the main gear struts. fractures that had not been present during pre-flight checks. Maintenance Chief Watanabe examined the damaged components with growing concern, observing that the steel appeared brittle, almost crystalline in its structure. 3 days later, aircraft 1452 suffered a complete landing gear collapse upon touchdown. Pilot Officer Tanaka emerged uninjured, but the Hayate was deemed a total loss. Its fuselage was twisted beyond repair, engine mounts were cracked, and propeller blades were bent into useless shapes. The accident report attributed the cause to mechanical failure, but Kobayashi's experienced eye detected a more ominous issue. The quality of materials was inconsistent with the prototypes they had tested in Japan. Watanabe's detailed inspection of the collapsed gear revealed the full extent of the problem. The heat treatment of the steel struts was uneven, resulting in areas of extreme hardness adjacent to sections that remained dangerously soft. Under the stresses of combat maneuvering and heavy landings, these inconsistencies acted as fault lines, causing fractures to spread through critical, load-bearing components. "This is not the same steel quality we saw in the early production aircraft," he reported to Kobayashi. "Something has changed in the manufacturing process." The engine problems proved even more concerning. The HA-45 Homar, which had performed flawlessly in the prototypes, now exhibited significant power variations from aircraft to aircraft. Lieutenant Yamada's fighter produced barely 1,800 horsepower at takeoff, 200 less than the specified requirement. Sergeant Pilot Ito's engine ran so hot that he was forced to abort 2 missions when cylinder head temperatures exceeded safe limits. Most alarmingly, Pilot Officer Fuji experienced a complete engine failure at 8,000 feet over enemy territory. Only his skill and good fortune allowed him to glide back to friendly airspace and execute a dead-stick landing. Maintenance records revealed the underlying crisis. Engines supposedly built to identical specifications varied by as much as 200 horsepower in actual output. Some Homar engines delivered their rated power smoothly across the entire operational envelope, while others suffered from rough running, overheating, or premature component failure. The precision manufacturing that had enabled the prototype's exceptional performance was rapidly disappearing from the production aircraft. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Also, please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The operational readiness of the 22nd Sentai was plummeting at an alarming pace. As September arrived, the rates had decreased from 80% to a mere 65%. The aircraft, designed to command the skies over China, were instead sitting idle, awaiting the arrival of spare parts that were either late or non-existent. Kobayashi was forced to carefully ration combat missions, meticulously selecting the few pilots who would fly the mechanically sound aircraft available on any given day. This situation had a devastating impact on the morale of the pilots. They had undergone extensive training with the expectation that the Ki-84 would restore Japan's dominance in the air. They had committed performance figures to memory, practiced tactics to exploit the Hayate's superior speed, and mentally prepared themselves for aerial combat in a fighter capable of matching American capabilities. Instead, they found themselves piloting aircraft that could fail at any moment, often without warning, creating a sense of betrayal and disillusionment. Pilot Officer Nakamura's personal diary captured the growing frustration. "Today, my engine lost power during combat with 2 P-40 Warhawks. Aircraft that I should have easily outrun nearly shot me down, because my Homar could not maintain full power above 12,000 feet. The Americans are not better pilots. They simply have aircraft that work as advertised. This sentiment encapsulated the growing belief that the Ki-84's failures were not due to pilot error or enemy superiority, but rather to the aircraft's inherent mechanical flaws. Reports from other Ki-84 squadrons confirmed that the 22nd Sentai's issues were not isolated. The 52nd Sentai in the Philippines reported similar landing gear failures, where the landing gear would buckle or collapse upon landing. The 73rd Sentai in Formosa documented identical engine inconsistencies, causing the aircraft to perform erratically or fail mid-flight. Factory manager Yamamoto received increasingly urgent requests for technical support, spare parts, and explanations for the declining quality of production aircraft, creating a sense of mounting pressure and responsibility. Stay with us to see how this unfolds and what happens next. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Intelligence reports from captured American pilots revealed the enemy's growing awareness of Japanese manufacturing problems. A downed P-51 pilot told his interrogators, "We were told to watch for new Japanese fighters with improved performance, but half the ones we encounter seem to have mechanical problems. Some can barely keep up with our bombers, let alone fight our escorts." This intelligence highlighted the fact that the Americans were not only aware of the Ki-84's potential, but also of its growing mechanical issues, giving them a tactical advantage in the air. The statistical reality was undeniable. Combat losses to enemy action remained acceptable. The Ki-84's armament and protection allowed experienced pilots to engage American fighters on roughly equal terms. However, mechanical failures were destroying nearly 30% of the aircraft without any enemy involvement whatsoever. Landing gear collapses, engine failures, hydraulic malfunctions, and brake system breakdowns were removing Hayates from combat more effectively than American guns, turning the Ki-84 into a self-destructive liability. Kobayashi's October status report to higher headquarters painted a grim picture. 22nd Sentai currently maintains 9 aircraft in operational condition from original complement of 18. Losses: 3 to enemy action, 6 to mechanical failure. Request immediate technical assistance and priority delivery of replacement aircraft built to original specifications. This report laid bare the dire state of the 22nd Sentai, highlighting the devastating impact of mechanical failures and the urgent need for assistance. The response from Tokyo was both revealing and terrifying. Replacement aircraft were being produced as rapidly as possible, but quality control standards had been reduced to meet urgent delivery requirements. The perfect fighter that Japan had designed to beat the P-51 Mustang was being destroyed not by American pilots, but by the desperate industrial shortcuts required to build it fast enough for a losing war, revealing the tragic irony of the situation. The first B-29 superfortresses appeared over Tokyo Bay on November 24, 1944. Their silver fuselages gleaming like deadly angels at 30,000 feet. From his office window at the Nakajima factory in Ota, Chief Engineer Koyama watched the formation pass overhead with the terrible certainty that his world was about to change forever. The bombers flew with impunity, too high for most Japanese interceptors, their mere presence announcing that America's industrial might had finally reached Japan's home islands, signaling the beginning of the end. Factory manager Yamamoto received the acceleration order 3 days later. Ki-84 production must increase from 40 aircraft per month to 120 by January 1945. The directive came with no additional resources, no extra steel allocations, and no supplementary skilled workers. Simply a demand that the impossible be accomplished through determination and sacrifice. Yamamoto stared at the production schedule spread across his desk, performing mental calculations that confirmed what his experience already knew. Quality would be the first casualty of this new urgency. The initial B-29 raids targeted aircraft factories with surgical precision. On February 10, 1945, waves of superfortresses swept over the Ota complex at midday, their bomb bays disgorging hundreds of 500 lb general-purpose bombs across the Nakajima production facilities. The explosion shattered assembly lines, destroyed precision tooling, and buried months of accumulated parts inventory under tons of twisted metal and concrete debris. Koyama watched 17 years of engineering excellence disappear in 90 minutes of methodical destruction. 2 weeks later, carrier-based aircraft from Task Force 58 struck the rebuilt portions of the factory in a coordinated attack that demonstrated America's overwhelming air superiority. Hellcats and Corsairs swept in at low altitude there. 50 caliber machine guns, stitching lines of destruction across anything that resembled industrial activity. The raids were so frequent and effective that normal production became impossible, bringing the factory to a standstill. Nakajima was forced to implement a dispersal program that scattered Ki-84 manufacturing across dozens of smaller facilities hidden in schools, temples, and underground bunkers. The dispersal strategy reduced production to less than 25% of required output, while simultaneously destroying quality control systems that had barely functioned under normal circumstances, further exacerbating the existing problems. Components manufactured in a converted schoolhouse in Gunma Prefecture arrived at final assembly with dimensional tolerances that varied wildly from specifications. Engine parts produced in underground workshops lacked the precision machining that made the He-45 Homare function properly. Most critically, the heat treatment facilities required for proper steel processing were too large and conspicuous to hide from American reconnaissance aircraft, leading to further compromises in quality and performance. Yamamoto's daily accounts meticulously chronicled the spiraling downfall of industrial capacity. The availability of high-grade steel dwindled as Allied bombing campaigns crippled transportation networks and obliterated specialized foundries. The intricate alloys essential for crafting landing gear, struts, were now substituted with any available metals salvaged from razed structures and ruined vehicles. The quality control personnel, already depleted by combat drafts, were replaced by older volunteers lacking the necessary technical expertise to discern substandard components. The escalating fuel crisis magnified every existing predicament exponentially. The He-45 Homare engine had been meticulously engineered to utilize high-octane aviation gasoline, which ensured seamless and consistent combustion across its 18-cylinder configuration. However, by the early months of 1945, Japanese refineries were only capable of producing low-grade synthetic fuel. This inferior fuel caused the sophisticated engine to operate erratically, overheat, and experience premature failures in its components. Carbureted variants of the engine, hastily introduced in an attempt to simplify maintenance, proved to be even more problematic than the original direct injection systems when forced to run on this substandard fuel. Lieutenant Fubashi found himself in the position of training replacement pilots on aircraft that were virtually unrecognizable compared to the fighters he had rigorously tested just 18 months prior. The Ki-84 prototypes, which had impressively achieved speeds of 380 km/h under controlled conditions, were now being delivered from factories with maximum speeds barely exceeding 250 km/h. The engine power output fluctuated so dramatically that pilots were unable to accurately predict their aircraft's performance from one flight to the next. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The devastating human cost of this industrial collapse became starkly evident in the accident reports that piled up on Fubashi's desk on a daily basis. Pilot Officer Sato tragically lost his life when his landing gear failed catastrophically during a routine training flight. The struts simply snapped without warning due to inadequate heat treatment. Lieutenant Yoshida managed to survive a forced landing after experiencing complete engine failure. But the aircraft was irrevocably destroyed when its deficient brake systems failed to halt the powerless fighter before it careened into a drainage ditch. Perhaps most heartbreaking was the case of Flight Sergeant Kimura, who perished in a crash caused by control surface failure, a catastrophic breakdown that investigators determined was the result of substandard bolts manufactured from scrap metal in a makeshift basement workshop. Production statistics painted a bleak picture of an industrial system in its final throes of collapse. The original Ki-84 specifications had called for 3,000 aircraft to be delivered by the war's conclusion. Yet by the spring of 1945, fewer than 2,800 had been completed, and the operational readiness rates for those delivered aircraft had plummeted below 45%. American intelligence estimates erroneously suggested that Japanese fighter production was actually accelerating, failing to account for the profound degradation in quality that rendered these newly manufactured aircraft virtually useless for combat operations. The relentless submarine blockade encircling Japan's home islands effectively severed the delivery of critical components that could not be produced domestically. Specialized instruments, precision bearings, and high-quality steel all required materials or advanced manufacturing techniques that Japan no longer possessed. Consequently, Ki-84 fighters were rolling off the assembly lines, either missing essential equipment altogether or fitted with substandard substitutes that made them exceedingly dangerous to their own pilots. Squadron leader Kobayashi, temporarily reassigned to Kasumigara Air Base to oversee the training of new pilots, grimly observed waves of replacement aviators struggling to master aircraft that bore scant resemblance to the fighters they had been promised. These young men, who had dedicated months to meticulously mastering the Ki-84's expected performance characteristics, now found themselves flying machines that responded unpredictably, suffered mechanical failures without warning, and could barely outpace the American bombers they were tasked with intercepting. Japan's final desperate attempt to sustain aircraft production took the form of underground factories. Elaborate tunnel complexes carved deep into mountainsides housed assembly lines designed to produce 200 Ki-84 fighters per month while remaining concealed from American reconnaissance aircraft. However, these subterranean facilities lacked adequate ventilation for paint booths, sufficient lighting for precision work, and the necessary transportation infrastructure for moving completed aircraft to operational airfields. Most critically, they were unable to replicate the rigorous quality control systems that had made the original prototypes such exceptional fighters. By April 1945, the widening gap between the Ki-84's design potential and the grim reality of its manufacturing had become an unbridgeable chasm. The very aircraft that had once promised to restore Japanese air superiority was now proving to be more hazardous to its own pilots than to the enemy they were supposed to engage. Factory manager Yamamoto's production reports meticulously documented this industrial tragedy. Japan still possessed the engineering knowledge required to build world-class fighters, but it had irretrievably lost the manufacturing capability needed to produce them reliably. The confluence of relentless Allied bombing, crippling material shortages, and unrealistic production quotas had transformed the Ki-84 from Japan's greatest aviation achievement into a stark symbol of industrial collapse. The invasion of Okinawa commenced at dawn on April 1, 1945, and within hours the dire reality of Japan's position became undeniably clear. American forces had established a strategic foothold just 350 miles from Kyushu, bringing virtually any target within the Japanese home islands within easy reach of their fighter-escorted bombers. Squadron leader Kobayashi received orders that afternoon to prepare 11 Ki-84 fighters for a suicide mission against the American airfields, being rapidly carved out of Okinawan coral. A mission that would demand flawless performance from his aircraft over the longest overwater flight most of his pilots had ever attempted. The pre-flight preparations chillingly revealed the full extent of the manufacturing crisis that had consumed Japanese aviation. Aircraft 1463 exhibited hydraulic fluid leaks from multiple system connections, the direct result of gaskets manufactured from inferior rubber compounds that were unable to maintain pressure under combat stress. The port landing gear on aircraft 1471 extended only partially during testing, its actuating mechanism binding due to poor quality machining tolerances in the hydraulic cylinders. Most concerning was aircraft 1458, whose HA-45 engine emitted thick black smoke during run-up, an ominous indication of internal damage that the maintenance crews simply lacked the necessary parts to repair. Chief Maintenance Officer Watanabe dedicated the entire night to the daunting task of preparing a squadron of fighters for combat. Out of the 18 planes, theoretically at his disposal, his goal was to cobble together just 11 that were actually fit to fly. His repair work was less about careful maintenance and more like emergency battlefield surgery, as he scavenged usable parts from grounded aircraft to create machines that might just survive a single mission. For instance, the fuel pumps taken from aircraft 1444 found a new home in aircraft 1467. Similarly, the landing gear struts from aircraft 1455 were used to replace the cracked ones in aircraft 1473. By April 14th, Watanabe had managed to assemble a fleet of 11 aircraft, which he described as being made from the bones of 18. The mission briefing on April 15th revealed the near-impossible situation facing Japanese aviation. Intelligence reports showed that American forces had established 3 operational airfields on Okinawa. These airfields were defended by over 200 fighter aircraft, including the advanced P-51D Mustangs and P-47 Thunderbolts. Kobayashi's 11 Ki-84 fighters were to fly at low altitude to avoid radar detection, then climb to attack altitude over the target. Their mission was to bomb parked aircraft and fuel depots, and then fight their way back to Kyushu through what was sure to be overwhelming enemy fighter opposition. The mission began at 0530 hours, with Kobayashi leading the formation in aircraft 1469, one of the few Hayates that still performed close to its original specifications. For the first hour, the flight went smoothly, with all 11 fighters maintaining a tight formation as they flew just above the waves at an altitude of 50 feet. However, the mechanical problems that had plagued Ki-84 operations throughout 1945 soon began to surface, even before the formation reached enemy territory. Aircraft 1472, piloted by Officer Sasaki, began emitting white smoke at 0645 hours as its engine started burning oil at an alarming rate. The He-45's cylinder head temperatures steadily rose into the danger zone, despite Sasaki's efforts to reduce power and lean the fuel mixture. 20 minutes later, the engine completely seized, its internal parts fusing together due to excessive heat and lack of lubrication. Sasaki had no choice but to attempt a water landing, becoming the first casualty of a mission that hadn't even encountered enemy forces yet. The formation continued toward Okinawa with 10 aircraft, but more mechanical issues emerged as the flight progressed. Lieutenant Tanaka reported intermittent loss of hydraulic pressure in aircraft 1468, making his flight controls increasingly heavy and unresponsive. The fuel flow indicator in aircraft 1471 fluctuated wildly, indicating a potential pump failure or contaminated fuel lines that could cause the engine to stall at any moment. Most alarmingly, aircraft 1465 began experiencing electrical failures that gradually knocked out radio communication, navigation instruments, and engine monitoring systems. As the remaining formation approached the Okinawan coast at 0715 hours, American radar operators detected the low-flying aircraft and directed interceptors to engage them. The tactical situation quickly worsened as P-51 Mustangs dived from above to attack the Japanese fighters before they could reach their targets. Kobayashi ordered maximum power and began climbing to gain the necessary altitude for bombing runs, but several of his aircraft could not handle the emergency power settings. Aircraft 1464, flown by Flight Sergeant Watabe, suffered complete engine failure during the maximum power climb, when the EH-A-45's connecting rod broke and pierced the crankcase. This catastrophic internal damage immediately turned the engine into a hindrance, forcing Watabe to attempt a dead stick landing on the contested island below. Aircraft 1467 experienced landing gear extension during the combat climb, a hydraulic malfunction that increased drag so significantly that the fighter could not maintain formation airspeed. The actual attack against the American airfields turned into a chaotic and disorganized battle, as mechanical failures crippled the Japanese combat effectiveness more than the enemy's actions. Lieutenant Yoshida managed to drop his bombs on a fuel depot, but had to stop his strafing run when his 20mm cannons jammed due to faulty ammunition feed mechanisms. Officer Nakamura's aircraft lost all hydraulic pressure during his bombing run, making the controls so heavy that he could barely keep the plane level, let alone perform any combat maneuvers. The withdrawal from Okinawa became a desperate race for survival, as American fighters chased the surviving Japanese aircraft back toward Kyushu. Aircraft 1473 suffered brake system failure during its escape attempt, causing the wheel assemblies to lock and creating massive drag, making the fighter an easy target for the pursuing Mustangs. The electrical failures in aircraft 1465 finally caused complete instrument failure, forcing the pilot to navigate by dead reckoning while under attack from multiple enemy fighters. Out of the 11 Ki-84 fighters that started the mission, only 3 made it back to base, and 2 of those suffered landing gear collapses upon landing due to the poor quality steel and inadequate heat treatment that had become common in late war production. The mission's tactical results were insignificant, with minimal damage to American airfields that was repaired within hours. However, the strategic implications were devastating. Japan's most advanced fighter aircraft had proven incapable of performing even basic combat operations due to mechanical unreliability. Kobayashi's after-action report highlighted the complete breakdown of Japanese aviation capability. Mission effectiveness reduced to 0 due to mechanical failures exceeding combat losses by a ratio of 2.1. Aircraft that reached the target area could not maintain formation or execute coordinated attacks due to individual system failures. Recommendation: suspend all Ki-84 combat operations until manufacturing quality control can be restored to acceptable standards. Stay with us. We're about to wrap up the story. We would be grateful for your like and subscription. Leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The diary entry of an anonymous pilot, discovered within the wreckage of aircraft 1469 following a perilous mission, poignantly illustrated the devastating human consequences of industrial disintegration. Today, I piloted what was intended to be Japan's premier fighter. The engine sputtered at 15,000 feet. The landing gear warning light blinked incessantly throughout the entire duration of the flight. Upon landing, the left strut buckled instantaneously upon making contact with the ground. This is not the aircraft we were promised during our training. This is not the weapon that will deliver Japan from its impending doom. The cataclysmic atomic detonation that obliterated Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, not only annihilated a city, but also extinguished the last vestiges of Japanese hope for resistance. Deep within the subterranean aircraft factories nestled within the mountains surrounding Nagoya, laborers toiled relentlessly, assembling Ki-84 fighters from components of such abysmally low quality that the completed aircraft could scarcely manage to taxi, let alone engage in combat missions. Factory manager Yamamoto traversed through tunnels lined with Hayate aircraft in various states of completion. Their engines destined never to ignite, their landing gear poised to collapse upon their initial deployment, and their control surfaces crafted from materials salvaged from the debris of bombed-out buildings. The projected production rate of 200 aircraft per month had devolved into a bitter mockery of reality. The underground assembly lines yielded a meager output of approximately 30 fighters each month, with half of these immediately rendered inoperable due to mechanical malfunctions detected during initial engine tests. The precision tooling indispensable for the fabrication of AA-45 Homar engines had been obliterated in bombing raids months prior, supplanted by makeshift equipment incapable of upholding the strict tolerances essential for dependable operation. Workers who had once meticulously crafted components to within 1,000th of an inch now struggled to attain dimensional accuracy measured in mere fractions of inches. Chief Engineer Koyama received reports from testing centers documenting the comprehensive degradation of the Ki-84's performance. Contemporary production aircraft, ostensibly identical to the prototypes of 1943, now achieved maximum velocities below 250 mph, rendering them slower than the American P-40 Warhawk fighters, which had been deemed obsolete since 1942. The Homar engines exhibited such inconsistent power output that pilots were unable to anticipate whether their aircraft would ascend normally or struggle merely to maintain altitude even in level flight. Lieutenant Fubashi found himself conducting acceptance flights on aircraft that bore only a superficial resemblance to the fighters he had evaluated 2 years prior. The cockpit instruments were crude imitations of the originally specified precision gauges, frequently providing readings so inaccurate that pilots were compelled to rely on intuition rather than precise data. The hydraulic systems leaked incessantly, leaving puddles of fluid on hangar floors and creating hazardous, slippery conditions that jeopardized ground operations. Most tragically, the armament systems that had once positioned the Ki-84 as potentially superior to American fighters now suffered frequent malfunctions due to ammunition manufactured from inferior materials in makeshift factories. The fuel situation deteriorated catastrophically as Japan's synthetic refineries endured repeated bombing raids. The high-octane aviation gasoline, which enabled the Humar engine to generate its rated 2,000 horsepower, was replaced by crude substitutes that induced severe engine knock, overheating, and premature component failure. Pilots reported experiencing unpredictable power loss during flight, occasionally recovering after several minutes, but frequently necessitating emergency landings that typically resulted in landing gear collapse due to the brittle steel utilized in late-war struts. Squadron leader Kobayashi, now tasked with defending the Tokyo area with whatever aircraft could be rendered airworthy, confronted the insurmountable challenge of intercepting B-29 bombers, with fighters that could scarcely reach the altitudes at which the superfortresses operated. His pilots, many of whom were teenagers with fewer than 50 hours of flight training, struggled to control aircraft whose flight characteristics fluctuated from day to day, contingent upon which components had been substituted with substandard replacements during maintenance. The mechanical failure rate soared to unprecedented levels by July 1945. Exceeding 50% of Ki-84 fighters were grounded at any given moment, awaiting parts that would never materialize or repairs that could not be executed with available materials. Aircraft that did manage to take off faced a 20% probability of experiencing critical system failures during flight, failures that frequently proved fatal to pilots, lacking the experience to manage emergencies. In an aircraft whose backup systems had also been compromised by deficient manufacturing quality. The arrival of American technical personnel in Japan, following the surrender, unveiled the full scope of the engineering tragedy that had befallen the Ki-84 program. Captain Chuck Morrison, a test pilot assigned to assess captured Japanese aircraft, approached the examination of a late-production Hayate with the methodical professionalism that distinguished American technical intelligence efforts. His initial assessment, predicated solely on visual inspection, revealed numerous manufacturing flaws that would have been promptly rejected in American production facilities. Morrison's flight test of the captured Ki-84, utilizing high-octane American aviation fuel, yielded results that astounded both American and Japanese observers. With appropriate fuel and basic maintenance to rectify the most conspicuous mechanical issues, the fighter attained a maximum velocity of 426 km/h within 11 km of the P-51D Mustang's top speed. The climb rate improved dramatically to over 3,000 feet per minute. Most remarkably, all systems functioned as originally intended when furnished with quality components and proper maintenance procedures. The post-war revelation was profoundly devastating in its implications. Japan had, in fact, conceived a fighter capable of matching or surpassing American aircraft performance. The Ki-84's fundamental engineering was robust, its aerodynamics were efficient, and its power plant held the potential to be superior to anything America produced when properly manufactured and maintained. The failure was not conceptual but industrial. Japan's manufacturing capacity had crumbled under the strain of total war, rendering it impossible to construct the aircraft their engineers had designed. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. I'm writing from California, and I find the video topic incredibly insightful. It's a stark reminder of how industrial capacity and material quality can impact even the best designs in times of crisis. The sight of Morrison's test flights evoked a complex blend of feelings in Fubashi, a mixture of professional respect and deep sorrow. The American pilot was maneuvering the Ki-84 with the same finesse and precision that Fubashi himself had demonstrated during the prototype phase back in 1943. The aircraft's smooth power, responsive controls, and overall performance validated the early hopes and expectations that had once surrounded the project. As he observed Morrison expertly showcasing the fighter's potential, Fubashi lamented, "Our design was fundamentally sound. The tragedy is that we lack the ability to produce it effectively when it mattered most." American technical teams delved into statistical analysis, uncovering the full extent of the industrial calamity that had befallen the Ki-84 program. Out of the 3,514 units manufactured throughout the war, a mere fraction, less than 120, were consistently deemed fit for operational deployment. Startlingly, mechanical failures in combat surpassed losses incurred from enemy engagements by an almost 2-to-1 margin. This aircraft, initially envisioned as a means to reclaim Japanese air dominance, instead served as a stark emblem of industrial breakdown, buckling under the immense strains of total war. In interviews conducted by American investigators, factory manager Yamamoto shed light on the series of interconnected failures that had undermined the production quality of the Ki-84. The cumulative effects of bombing raids on precision tooling facilities, the depletion of skilled labor as workers were drafted into combat roles, the substitution of substandard materials, and the imposition of unrealistic production quotas culminated in a perfect storm of manufacturing challenges. "We were fully aware that we were producing flawed aircraft," he conceded. However, the alternative was to cease production altogether. Stay with us as we explore the final chapter of this compelling story. We would be grateful for your like and subscription, as it helps us bring more stories like this to you. Feel free to leave a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The lone Ki-84 that emerged from the war unscathed stands as a poignant memorial to engineering prowess, undermined by industrial constraints. Preserved and exhibited at the Tokugawa Kinenkan Museum in Chiran, this fighter embodies both the zenith of Japanese aviation design and the devastating consequences of attempting to mass-produce sophisticated aircraft amidst the chaos of wartime. Museum patrons, perhaps unaware of the fighter's intricate history, perceive a streamlined machine seemingly capable of rivaling any contemporary aircraft, a potential that, under ideal circumstances, was indeed within its grasp. The saga of the Ki-84 serves as a definitive illustration of the divergence between engineering brilliance and manufacturing capacity. Japan's engineers conceived a fighter capable of challenging the P-51 Mustang, yet their industrial infrastructure, crippled by the demands of total war, proved incapable of delivering that fighter when the nation desperately needed it.